What up everybody, welcome back to the Audio Cycling YouTube channel, where today, very happy to say that we will be doing the Velogames Tour de France episode. Very much looking forward to telling you my opinions on the race. Of course, let's just dive straight in and talk about the riders. Of course, because it's a Grand Tour, if you're new to Velogames, it is split into all-rounders, climbers, unclassified. You have to be a bit more organised in your team construction in comparison to stage races where you can just pick whoever. But Jonas Vingegaard is the most expensive rider, which makes a lot of sense considering that he was 18 credits last year, now he's 26 credits. And I think that there's no reason to not pick Vingegaard, to be honest with you. He is kind of joint favourite to be winning this tour this year. His counterpart Pogačar is 2 credits cheaper, so you could perhaps go with Pogačar if you were really strapped on, if you really needed those 2 extra credits, you could go with Pogačar instead. But there's no reason to not pick either of them. In all honesty, Pogačar is in theory the better choice from a Velogames perspective, because last year he got more points than Vingegaard, just because Pogačar is more prominent in more like sprint finishes and stuff like that, so he does tend to pick up a couple more points than Vingegaard, who isn't as much of a puncher as Pogačar. So both of them are good choices, and I think that you could definitely pick both of them, or you could pick one of them. I certainly think that you should definitely at least be picking one of them, because going with a team which has none of them, I think isn't the best choice. Aside from those two, there's Enric Mas, Ben O'Connor, Matthias Jensen, and lots of other riders in the all-rounder category. I'd say that Ben O'Connor is my next favourite, just because he looks so good at the Dauphiné. He's finished 4th in this race in the past. Of course, that was when he was 8 credits, now he's 14 credits. And I do think that he is probably the best 14 credit rider of these lot. Mas is just got too many question marks over him for my liking. He wasn't looking good enough in the Dauphiné. Jensen, on the other hand, did win the Tour de Suisse, but this is his Tour de France debut. He's never really been overly competitive in a Grand Tour before, so that does make me a little bit cautious about picking a rider like that. I know we're in an era where Grand Tour debutants can still do very well, but Skelmo, there's something about him which isn't, I don't know. I feel like I just don't know, to be honest with you. He could very well be the big surprise, but I think that for a debutant of a tour, 14 credits is perhaps a little bit steep for my liking. On the other hand, you've got Carapaz, who, again, probably not the greatest choice, considering that he wasn't looking good at the Dauphiné either. I know he won the Mercantour, but it wasn't against the best competition. So Carapaz I'm not keen for either, even though he has finished on the podium of the Tour de France before. That was in the Ineos era. I think that Yates is a good choice. There's a lot of chatter about Yates being a co-leader with Pogačar. I know I talked about it on my preview. I think that Yates is a good choice, to be honest with you. When you think about the logic that he was the second best rider at the Dauphiné in terms of GC, is it possible that he could finish on the podium in this race? It certainly is, considering that the other favourites for the 3rd place position are O'Connor and Hindley, both of whom he beat at the Dauphiné. Bernal and Martinez, I'm not keen on that, to be honest with you. Neither of them are particularly safe choices. Bernal's coming back from injury, Martinez is too inconsistent. Bilbao, I think, is a really good choice for 8 credits. I think that he can do a decent GC, probably finish inside the top 10, likely getting a couple of breakaways. You know, they're very keen to do a good performance in honour of Gino Mader. I think they'll be up there in Team GC as well. I think that Bilbao is possibly my favourite 8 credit rider in this category. Jorgensen has had a very good season, apart from the Dauphiné, I think that he did, where I think he was in service of Enric Mas, so perhaps that's not a result to take a lot of conclusion from. Kelderman, I think, will just be a domestique. Lutsenko is always just that rider who will get you somewhere around 700 points or so. He could finish top 10, getting a couple of breakaways as well. I think that Lutsenko is always a very safe choice, to be honest with you, but I do still favour Bilbao. Paulus was 6 credits last year, now he's 8 credits. Probably still quite worthwhile going with. He has had a good season, but he wasn't looking good at Tour de Suisse, so maybe might not be the greatest choice. I would say that Bilbao and Lutsenko are better well, maybe not better, but safer choices. And Soler will just be a domestique. And then the 6 credit riders, I'm really not a fan of any of them, to be honest with you. I am sorry. So I'll probably stay away from them. On the other hand, there are some good 6 credit climbers, but we'll get onto them. Hindley at 16 makes a lot of sense, considering that he is the 3rd favourite in the betting odds. So makes a lot of sense. He's won a Giro before. I think that Hindley is a good choice if you can get him on. I would highly recommend to do so. Godou's got question marks because of that poor criterium de Dauphiné, but he did do good at Paris-Nice. It's very hard to tell what Godou's going to be doing in this race. I would perhaps favour trying to get a Hindley in there instead, or maybe picking some breakaway riders instead just for the safety aspect. Bardet will probably finish inside the top 10. Is he going to breach like 1,000 points? I'm not overly certain. I would probably say that he'll get somewhere near 900. I reckon that's probably a more realistic aim. Alaphilippe, as a guy who's probably, the terrain which suits Alaphilippe is in stages 1 and 2. There aren't that many puncher finishes in this race, but the whole team is largely focused around Jakobsen, and therefore Alaphilippe will have a lot of freedom in breakaways. There's no reason why Alaphilippe might not try and repeat what he did in 2019, for example. So I think Alaphilippe is just a good maverick. Ciccone, always another consistent rider, usually goes for breakaways. Usually will pick up some top 10s in stages, and I think that he is a very good choice to be going with. There is Skelmoser in there as well, so maybe might have to look after him a little bit, or whether he's got complete freedom, I don't really know. Trek don't really do a press release to tell you what's going on with their objectives, so Ciccone seems like a good choice, to be honest with you. Would I perhaps fave Alaphilippe? I don't know. Something tells me that Ciccone is a bit of a safer option because he'll finish higher up in GC. Landa was looking bad of a Dauphiné. I'd much rather take Bilbao. Pino will probably go for KOM classification more than likely. He did very good in the Giro, and if he repeats that performance again, I think that he could do quite a good performance. I think he did quite good in national champs as well. Rodriguez, again, will probably finish inside the top 10, but is that worth it for a 10 credit rider? Probably not. I would expect a little bit more perhaps. Simon Yates, again, you just never know what's going to happen with Simon Yates. He could DNF the race. He could do good in GC. He could do bad in GC. He could win a couple of stages. He could do absolutely nothing throughout the whole race. You just don't know because he hasn't done a lot of racing this year for us to really make a judgment on him. 8 credit riders. Felix Gall, of course, won a stage of Tour de Suisse. Big fan of that. Jack Haig, coming off of a Giro, but did better in the Dauphiné. So maybe he's going to do a really good job in this Tour. Whether he'll just be a domestique, I'm not really too sure. A man who will just be a domestique will be Sepp Kuss. He usually gets a little bit of freedom on a couple of stages, but I don't think that will happen this year. I think Jumbo-Visma are regimented. We're going for yellow. No breakaways or anything. Similarly for Micah. Guillaume Martin, the Mr. Yo-Yo himself, will probably finish inside the top 10 in GC. And he will probably get somewhere near 800 points. I honestly think that he's quite a solid choice for this race. Sometimes he's 10 credits, but he's had a little bit of a price reduction this year, and I think that does make him worthwhile now. Mienkes will probably finish top 10. Turns and Woods will be going for breakaways, but I'm not overly certain on their chances of winning the stages. And then into the 6 credit riders, there are some good ones. Barguil finished 17th in GC at the Giro, and I do think that he could do better in this Tour. He's, of course, a French rider in the biggest French race. Barguil could easily breach 600 points in this race, and I think that will make him very worthwhile as a 6 credit rider. So I say that Barguil is one of my kind of ones which I'm liking. Chavez as well has had a series of good GC results this year, including I think he was 11th at the Dauphiné, did good at the Croix de Fer, and also just good in I think it was Basque Country, and just a lot of solid performances. If Carapaz doesn't do that great, then Chavez could certainly have his own freedom. Guerrero's an interesting one as well. Will he just be working for Mass? Probably, more than likely. Pedrero looked good at Dauphiné as well. Did that attack on stage 8 or something like that, the one which Ciccone won, and I think that he's looking again pretty good. But my favourite one is Maxime Van Hils. He finished 5th in the first 2 stages of the Dauphiné. Great puncher, probably one of the only climbers on Lotto Destiny, and therefore will be getting him more in most of the breakaways, and could be a dark horse for maybe a couple of top 10s in those first 2 days, and I think that he's easily my favourite climber in that 6-point area. Moving on to the sprinters now, got Wout van Aert, who is of course always a good choice. There is only one time trial this year, which makes me less inclined to pick Wout van Aert. And there's also this thing about maybe he might be leaving the Tour a little bit early because of the birth of his child. So a couple of question marks over Wout van Aert. He says he's not going absolutely all in for green. He's going to wait to see how the race develops, how he's doing in that classification when he gets towards the end of the race. But Wout van Aert is always a good choice, to be honest with you. If you can afford him, and I'd probably say go for it. If you can't, there are some better options, further down who are cheaper. So Pedersen will probably be up there in the GC in the points classification as well. I think Philipsen is going to be one of the most heavily picked sprinters, considering that he is likely the fastest in the race. He's got Van der Poel leading him out alongside a very strong train. So I'll say that Philipsen is a really, really good one. Pedersen is still a good one, don't get me wrong, but I just favour Philipsen. Girmay will get over more lumps and bumps than some of the pure sprinters, like a Jakobsen. Would I take Girmay or Jakobsen? I'd say that honestly I might be tempted to take Girmay. The couple of stages that he will gain over the lumpier terrain, I think will put him in better stead. He might even gain some breakaways. So I think that Girmay, especially considering that he might survive stages 1 and 2, maybe he could get some GC points early on as well. So maybe favour Girmay. But saying that Jakobsen is more likely to win multiple stages over Girmay. So if you are focused on the medal competition, the side competition, which you can get by donating to Velogames, then maybe Jakobsen's the guy who you want to go with instead. Caleb Ewan I would stay away from because he is very inconsistent. Groenewegen I would favour instead, just because he is arguably maybe like the third fastest sprinter in this race. A really good lead out for him as well. Really good this year actually. Lots of wins, although maybe not the highest level. And for 10 he is a little bit cheaper than say a Jakobsen and might deliver on a very similar level. If you needed to save a couple of credits. Credit riders, Welsford on his debut maybe. Mayus is getting the green light from Bora, Bauhaus as well. Cavendish, if you are a sentimental person, maybe you're going to go with Cavendish. But of those 8 credit riders, I would say that Welsford or Mayus is your best bet. The 6 credit riders, you just got a lot of like the lead out men like Van Aert, Van Poppel, Degenkolb, Kees Bol. Cockard's not a bad one. I reckon he'll pick up a few top 10s. Maybe like a top 3 on one stage. Mezgec will probably get his own freedom on the stages where it's too hard for Groenewegen. I reckon he might get a bit of freedom as well. But I think that Christoph is pretty undervalued actually at 6 credits. This is a guy who is, we all know Christoph gets through Grand Tours. Like, he finishes these races. He's very experienced. He's always up there on the Champs-Élysées as well. And I just think that Christoph could easily get somewhere near 800 points, which would be a fantastic points return from a rider who's 6 credits. So that's just my opinion on it. The unclassified riders, this is where things get a little bit juicy, because we've got Pidcock and Van der Poel. Are they worth it at 10? I don't really know. I think they'll do good on the first few stages, but are there stages after that which really suit them? I do favour Pidcock over Van der Poel in this sense, because I think Pidcock will be better over more alpine terrain than Van der Poel. I think Van der Poel is going to be a very strong in week 1, maybe not do that much later on. Maybe he'll be more in for Philipsen, but I do like Pidcock because the Ineos don't have the greatest GC riders in this race, and therefore Pidcock might have his own freedom to go and chase the mountains classification, for example. I do see that he'll get multiple top 10s, but something is, he hasn't had the greatest of performances this year. Yes, he won Stradey. Yes, he came second in Liège, but Tour de Suisse was a little bit lacking, so a little bit of a question mark there. Magnus Cort Nielsen is always a good choice, to be honest with you. Laporte will be on lead-out duty, so I don't think he's the greatest, to be honest with you, unless Wout van Aert was to leave the race for baby reasons. Valentin Madouas, French champion, 6 credits last year, now he's 8 credits, but I think he'll just be tied to Godou, so however much it pains me, I can't wholeheartedly recommend Madouas. Fred Wright will have a lot of freedom as well. Him and Mohoric, very dangerous riders for the breakaways. And I think that Fred, he could win a stage. I reckon he'll get like 3 top 10s or something like that. But is that worth it for an 8 credit rider? I'm not really too sure. The 6 credit riders, honestly, the thing about the 6 credit riders is that none of them are particularly standout. They could all get somewhere near 400 points, but there's none of them which are absolutely stand out much better than the rest of them. So I'll just kind of throw a couple of names out there. If you wanted the assist points, of course, go for Jumbo and UAE riders. you'll probably get somewhere near 200 credits for those guys. Champoussin possibly finished 5th of the Mont Ventoux challenge, so maybe you could go with him. Of course, Clark won a stage last year. Kuznetsov could maybe do alright in the first 2 stages. Rui Costa, really good in February and March this year, but of course it's not February and March right now, it's going to be July when this race is on, so I don't know. Costa was okay at Tour de Suisse, but I'm not too sure about his performances in this race. De Boist, if Caleb Ewan starts doing really bad, De Boist just looks super good, right, in Bauer's Belgium Tour and the national and his road race as well for the national champs. De Boist was looking really good, and I would say that he could sneak at some top 10s if Caleb Ewan is not in particularly good form. Acorn he won the mountains classification at the Dauphiné, and he was also competing for it in like Paris-Nice or something earlier this year, so maybe he's keen for that in the first week or so. Gros Sharkner, I'm quite liking just for the assist points, to be honest with you. Gregard might go for the mountain classification. He won that in Paris-Nice. Chris Harp might go in some breakaways. Hugo Hull won a stage last year. Bob Jungels won a stage last year. Kung, very strong, won a stage at Tour de Suisse, but are there that many stages which suit him? Maybe not. There aren't really the flat TTs which he would like. Victor Lefebvre, very good on puncher finishes. Think back to Torreno and also the Dauphiné last year. He's very good on these punchy finishes. Maybe he does alright in the first 2 stages. Mohoric has of course won Tour de France stages in the past, so he would be a good one to be going with, but didn't look too great at the national championships of Slovenia, so a question mark over him there. Schultz almost won a stage last year. Quinn Simmons is pretty strong, is the recent USA national champion as well. Harold Tejada doing good in GC. I think he finished top 10 in GC at the Tour de Suisse, so Tejada could be a good one. Turnison has also won a stage at the Tour de France in 2019. I would say that, I know that I might butcher this name, but Torstein Trein is probably the best 6 credit rider, considering that he finished top 10 in the Criterium de Dauphiné in the GC. 6 credits on an unclassified rider. If you're going to pick anyone, pick him. That's just easy. George Zimmerman also won a stage of the Dauphiné. So plenty of guys who are good, but none who are particularly standout. And then the 4 credit riders, George has done a good job because lots of these guys aren't that great, to be honest with you. Jenfrid Beermans is good in some kind of like Belgian one-day races where there's a sprint at the end, but I think he'll be on a lead-out duty for Mazzato, but he could get his own sprinting opportunities. Calmejean was going for the mountains classification in the Tour de Suisse, and he has of course won a stage of a tour in the past, so he could be one who could go in the breakaway. Edmondson's looked pretty good recently. You know, if Welsford were to say DNF the race, think that maybe Edmondson could get his own chances. Maybe they'll go for Degenkolb instead. I'm not really too sure. Galopin finished 4th in the French national champs, which was a really brutal race. So think, you know, if you guys are struggling for picks, look at the national champs results recently, and you know that will be a really good form gauge for you guys to be following. Mikhail Morkuv, I remember a couple of years ago when Cav did really well, people picked Morkuv an awful lot when he was 4 credits, and he did get like 300 and something points, just because as a lead-up man you do sometimes finish in the top 10 accidentally. If Jakobsen were to be OTL, Morkuv would probably become the lead out the sprinter, so you could hedge your bets on Morkuv and, you know, think that maybe on the Champs-Elysees maybe Morkuv is sprinting instead of Jakobsen. I don't really know. Anthony Perez usually gets in a lot of breakaways. Nons Peters, of course, a winner of the Giro stage and a Tour de France stage. So as a Tour de France stage winner, he is quite undervalued. So I'd say that Peters is my favourite 4 credit rider to be going with. And to be honest with you, the rest of them aren't really that great. So I'd say, yeah, go with Peters or Morkuv. Those would be my strongest recommendations. And that is it. I don't know how long this video is, but that is pretty much everyone. Of course, if you want a more in-depth analysis, I will be doing a video tomorrow, which will be somewhere near like 30-40 minutes long or something like that. I did one of these for the Giro and people seem to like my in-depth analysis, so be sure to subscribe and hang around because I will be doing that video tomorrow, and then I will be revealing who is going to be on my team the day after that on Thursday. So be sure to subscribe, it really helps me out, and drop a like on the video. And also, tell me who you're thinking of putting on your team. Is there anybody who I've missed? And all that is left to say is to stay safe out there, enjoy the Tour de France, and I'll see you in the next video. Salut!